Hey everyone, today I'm going to be showing you a very basic Terran versus Zerg build order that you can use to macro and on any map and both bio and mech, but this specific build order is going to be with bio shown to us by Gumiho, so let's get into it. Send that SCV out to build your first supply depot at 14. Barracks, and then gas, fill that gas geyser. Build a Reaper and an orbital. Send your SCV to the low ground. Command center. You're going to build a supply depot right now because you're going to build 2 units from the barracks. With the Reaper finished, start a Marine. Now add the factory. And as soon as possible, add the second refinery. Reactor on your barracks. Fill your refinery. Try and keep tabs on whether or not the Zerg is getting a third base or not. Add a starport rather, and then add an orbital at your natural. Swap the factory and the barracks, and start the hellion production. Add a tech lab onto the barracks. Swap the barracks off the tech lab. And then put the starport on it. Start a banshee and cloak. And then add a tech lab to the barracks. You also starting to want to wall off your natural with supply depots. You might need to double up, as hellions do take up that supply quite quick. Typically, with this build, you go into 6 hellions, unless you lose some, like Gumiho does just right now. But 6 to 8 is a generally good number. Get a second banshee, almost always, if you're going to bother getting cloak. Send an SCV to take your third CC, and then start stim on that tech lab on the barracks. Swap the factory off the reactor, and then add 2 more barracks, one on the now open reactor. Then swap the starport off the tech lab, add a reactor to the starport, and add a reactor onto the factory. Go for 2 engineering base. Add 2 refineries in your natural. Remember not to get supply blocked. Start your 1-1. Swap the factory from the reactor onto the now open tech lab. And then put the fresh barracks onto the now open reactor. Start tank production and get 2 medivacs. Also put an orbital on your third. Then go for 2 more barracks around the 6-minute mark. Add your 5th and 6th refineries to your 3rd base. You should have enough units now as your medivacs pop out to go for some type of drop. Definitely do so. Should be around 6:30. From here on out, just remember to get your 2-2 and macro and all those general things. So let's now go on to the build discussion. So the strengths of this build is that it's a macro build, which is just a generally good macro build to have, so it's also just very good at macroing, not really something you can cheese with or anything like that. It provides harassment and scouting as Hellion Banshee does, regardless of what opener or build you're going for. They're just really nice things to have as long as you're very good at using them consistently. It's a solid bio or mech build order, so again, it's going to the solid macro build order. It's one that's going to give you that defense in the early game and good to just basic build to work off of if you want to improve at StarCraft, and it's good for both compositions, so it's really nice to learn this one. You just swap out barracks and factory and maybe get some earlier gases. It also works on any map. You don't really have to be afraid of putting this on a smaller map like Catalyst or a larger map like Neon or something like that. And it has solid defense because that's what the Banshees really provide, along with the Hellions if you work with them correctly. Now, the weaknesses of this build are pretty few and far between because you actually can compensate for the most part, even if there are weaknesses. So, one of them is that it requires constant scouting and harassment with the Hellion Banshee because you want to have the Banshee scout any roaches that maybe avoid the Hellions. You want to keep the Hellions alive, even though it is majority roaches because Ling floods happen later on. So it does require you to be on top of that. To be honest, if you just keep them outside of the creep, then it's usually a good just general thing to do, and it's not really a weakness. And then early to mid-game, weak to unscouted all-ins. That's just going to be the basics of any macro build, is you're not really trying to get a large army initially, you're trying to get away with as little as possible while you get upgrades and economy. For tips and tricks, just general Terran things really, as this is a very general build again. Hellion Banshee, kind of the bread and butter builds of us Terrans. The Hellions are scouts and should only die for drones if kills are 100% certain, which you might find depending on what league you're in, that they always have a hole open with no lings, but as you get better and better, they should always have lings ready to go, so don't trust what you see. Banshees are for harassment, but also for scouting and defense. So even though it looks really juicy to grab the 10 drone kills, be wary of an overseer and a bunch of queens falling forward, because if they are going to go for a roach push, or any type of push really, then they're your first line of defense or just time buying maneuvers. Don't feel pressure to do damage with a double medevac drop. Distracting the Zerg, denying creep spread, finding queens, finding overlords, just really anything that's small but adds up are all very important as long as the 2 medevacs are kept alive. And then the third CC can be put in the wall on maps with no safe third. Ditto for the engineering base, I suppose, if the wall off is really, really large. So you have to work around it a little bit, as third CC wall offs can be tricky, but just send an SCV through in case you're like, oh, is that wall or not? Just send in a CV through and that'll tell you if it's Ling proof. And of course, if you like this content, then consider following me on this YouTube channel, on Twitter, on Twitch, on Instagram, supporting my Patreon, whatever. And also, go ahead and check out my other videos. Thanks for watching.